Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Best Today podcast. I'm Shunta Grant, your host, and today I'm telling all my business. I'm putting it out there. Actually, not really, but kind of. Today I want to use my life as a really an illustration in the principles that we teach here at Best Today, but really as a lesson in letting go. I know this is a message that so many of you who are listening currently need, have needed before, and will need in the future. And so I wanted to sit down and just talk through this because of some real-time things that have happened that I'm going to share, as well as when I sat back and I reflected, I thought about the fact that really learning how to let go it's in the top 3 best lessons that I have learned and consistently employed in my life. And it's just, that's why I decided to bring it to the podcast. As I was sitting and reflecting and thinking, I said, I need to take this message to the podcast and also just use my life and the decisions I've made and the choices I've made to be an illustration of what that looks like, knowing that it might look differently in your life, but the principle, as always, is still there. So let's get started, shall we? Like I mentioned, learning to let go has been a common theme. And again, one of the best lessons of my life. I don't know. It's like, where do you start when you're telling a thing about your life? You can start from like, it was a cold December morning, the day you were born. We'll skip ahead from, the early 80s. And I just will say, as I think about myself as a young adult and even like a older teen, I was the type of person who wanted to do the things that mattered to me well, right? That's something that has been consistent and true of me, likely my entire life. And for me, as a child, what is the thing that you do? I played I won't say played a number of sports. I was a cheerleader. That's just one. I went in gymnastics, but so it wasn't, all these extracurricular things. But for me, the biggest thing was school, wanting to check off the boxes, anything that was deemed like a high, worthy accomplishment or achievement. I went for it, whether that was being a straight A student or being on student body, being like, a member of the student body leadership government, all these things being in these, what was it called in high school, like NHS, National Honor Society, things like that, right? If it was something that to me was perceived as like, this is what the best of the best do, I wanted to do it. That's the kind of person I was. I wanted to check off the boxes, to do the things that I believed or what was portrayed to me. These are the steps to take to live the life you want, to have the career you want, to have more choices in life, right? So that's where that came from, I believed. And so for me, I focused a lot on grades and achievements and honors, and I just stacked them up and knocked them down from high school to college to law school and beyond. And I think that's important for context, right? To understand that part about me. It's like I set my mind on something and I'm going to accomplish it. Ask anybody who knows me, and that's probably one of the things they will tell you about me first and foremost. Get out of her way if she's on a mission. You're not going to steer her clear. You're either going to be a part of it or you're going to get kicked off the road. Just very focused and driven, very gritty. So for me, I was very much so a person that's like, this is my plan. I'm not bending. I'm going to go right after it. Right. So that's who you have in her, teen years, early 20s when I'm in college. And, I leave college, go to law school, do the same track, same thing. And then I think when this whole lesson of letting go comes in, I know exactly when I first really had to take on this. And that was when I was an expectant mom. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I had to learn to release and let go for my own good. I knew that for the first time, and really the first time in my life, this was the first time I ever really felt this way, that I could not have some picture perfect story in my head or this end goal that looked a particular way that I was dead set on. Now, what I could have are, this is how I would like it to be. This is the way I would like things to go. But even not holding on to that with, a death grip, like I may have other things in the past. And that was probably so helpful. And because of that, everything went better than I could have planned or expected. but it was learning to let go in case it did not. That was like the first time I really had to succumb and say, I'm allowing what will be to be. I didn't want to say this is exactly how labor will look or exactly how pregnancy will look. I let go of wanting things to look a certain way. And what I didn't realize when I was learning this really important lesson was that I would need that lesson for what was to come shortly thereafter. After my daughter was born, less than a year, I would say, that letting go of what a perfect picture or a perfect path looked like. Up until that point in my life, everything had been pretty much laid out for me. As far as what I mean by laid out for me is I knew the steps I wanted to take. I knew what that looked like, right? You go to college, you know what that looks like. You pick a major, you graduate in 4 years, you go to law school, you work like there's no tomorrow, and you do that for 3 years, and then you leave. And then so it's like these things had been set out for me. And then after school, that's when life comes in, and the road isn't narrow anymore. It's actually extremely wide, and there are multiple roads, and there are loops, and there's all these different things. And so leaving school and then getting out into like the quote unquote real world, this is I can't think of a better lesson for me to have learned early on. Although, I had my daughter, I think I had been out of law school a long time. I don't know how long, maybe, I don't want to guess, a long time before, having her. But when I realized, so I started practicing law, as most of you know my story. I left law school, clerked for a federal judge for 2 years, and then I went straight into private practice after that. And while practicing, that's when I had my daughter. And then after, my 3 months of maternity leave was over, I went back to practice. And it did not take me long to realize that I did not want to continue working at a firm, and not even a firm, but I didn't even want to continue practicing law, at least not in the way in which the ways they were presented to me. I live in a somewhat small city, and it doesn't have as many opportunities. It definitely didn't back then. And I just didn't want to leave one thing that I hated for another thing that I maybe hated a little bit less. I decided that wasn't good enough for me, right? And I'm really proud of myself when I look back, because that was a really mature and hard decision. And I think for a lot of people, it takes from making that determination to actually doing something about it, maybe years. But I'm also a person, like I said, I take action, right? So when I realized that this path that I had planned all these years, college was to get into law school was to practice law, practicing law was to, either become a judge or teach law school. Those are like my 2 end goals. I had to let go of that picture of what I had worked so very, very hard, and what I had spent so much money on. I don't think outside of a home, I've never paid for more for anything than my education, as far as like dollars are concerned. And so I had to let that go, though. When I realized that I did not want this to be my life, I wanted to have more pleasure and joy in my life than I was experiencing. I was dreading. I had the Monday night dreads, or the Sunday night dreads, when around 3-4 o'clock on Sunday, you just become completely and utterly sad. Like, it affected me physically. I could feel a change in my body, in my mood, in my mind, because I was thinking, tomorrow I have to go back to this place. And that was how I really felt. And I just knew that I owed it to myself to not feel that way for the rest of my life. That just was unacceptable. It was not. I'd rather go and live in a 1-bedroom shack with my entire family and be happy than, like, I just knew that I had to let some things go, right? I had to let go of this plan of, what my career might look like. I had to let go of an identity, one identity for another. I had to actually recognize how much of my identity was wrapped up in my title or career. And I think in that time frame, what's really exciting and beautiful in hindsight is that may have been one of the first places where one of the many seeds was planted in my life for what has now become best today, because it was in that time that I was getting clear on what I wanted. And even though I did not know then what all the steps were going to be, I knew I could start making some step at the very least. I may not know all the steps. I may not know exactly where this is going to lead, but I'm going to take the next step or one step. And so it's really beautiful as I sit here and think about it right now, like I can see how I teach so passionately and so assuredly. I don't know if that's a word, but how I'm so assured of the things I teach because I have lived them, y'all. I have lived them. I have done them. And I know that these principles are so true that I teach here at Best Today. And I'm thinking back and I'm just thinking about how proud I am of Shunta Grant. Like I am so proud as I just think back to, because as I even talk about it, it sounds really scary. But for those of you who did not know, when I left, I was working a business that I had started, that started really as just like a fun thing, selling hair bows that I was making for my daughter. And I had extra because, fabric makes a lot of 1 yard of fabric makes a lot of hair bows. And so I started what became Because of Zoe Designs, my first company. And it grew so fast. It started with just taking pictures on Instagram. And this was a time when Instagram was very different from what Instagram is now. It was a place where you could share openly and freely, and what you shared would be shared with the people who followed you. It was a time where there was no, aesthetic and everyone has to look like this is some type of digital magazine. It was just post. And from that, companies found me. And in less than in less than 6 months, I want to almost say, of us putting our website up, coming up with a name, stores began to pitch me or approach me for wholesale. And so the company started growing and I realized I really am loving doing this more than practicing law. And so when I left to grow Because of Zoe. And I thought that's what I would do until I, rode off into the sunset, this company that I loved. And what I also did in that process was I learned to not only let go, but to pick something up. I learned that I was a creative. I liked creating, which was really surprising to me because I had this limiting belief that you don't get to be creative and like a lawyer. You don't get to be like a thinker, and a creative. I'm not saying creatives don't think clearly. But I think if you understand what I'm saying, you understand what I'm saying. I didn't think you got to use both sides of the brain, right? You got to be like creative and you also, because I had already identified as what I thought was opposite of creative, which is like very much so like lawyerly, litigator. I like to argue and craft arguments and da-da-da-da. And so I got to pick up this part of myself that I was also discovering and uncovering, and really enjoying. I loved picking and still do love picking fabrics and trying them and testing them out. I didn't love the making over time. So that's something that we outsourced eventually, to a team of seamstresses. But part of what that was also when I left the practice of law and really had devoted myself full time. I was doing a lot of speaking at the time, locally here in Greenville, because people knew about my business and they knew that I was doing really well and I had left the practice of law. And so there were lots of times I was speaking and being introduced, and I realized I had not let go of that identity of like, I am a lawyer. And I would introduce myself and say, hi, I'm Shunta Grant. I used to practice law, but now I'm blah, blah, blah. And I noticed over time that I always led with that. And being aware and being introspective, I asked myself, why am I present day introducing you by talking about who I was before or what I even did before? Particularly because at that point it had no relevance. Like this wasn't a room that I was invited into because I was a lawyer. It was because I was a business owner. And so what I realized is I had to let go of this idea that it was being a lawyer that defined who I was, or that proved my smartness. Is that even a word? Isn't that funny? Proved my intelligence. How about that? Or proved that I, was someone who was worthy of your attention and your time. And I had to let that go, like big time, because as you know, there's another Best Today seed being planted, learning that your title, your job, your role, your degrees, those are not your identity. Those are part of your story. And those things can change. Those things probably will change throughout your lifetime. And so don't stick your permanent identity, who you are, to things that are temporal. You are not your job. You are not your role. You're not your titles. You are an individual free of all those things, independent of all those things. Before you insert any of the roles and titles that you play, Make sure your identity is grounded on something that is sustaining and permanent and not something as temporal as hi, I'm Shunta Grant. I used to be a lawyer, right? Or I used to practice law. At Best Today, we exist to help women just like you be your best one today at a time. So each week on the podcast, we are going to highlight your stories and your voices. So let's see what's in the inbox today.
My favorite Best Today product is definitely the Best Today Guide. The reason the Best Today Guide is my favorite is because it really centers me. It centers taking care of myself, putting myself in the daily conversation of what is going to be done. It allows me to just think about what's important to me day by day, not just long-term goals, but something for today that's just important for me, even if it's one or two things. That is just so important to my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual health. And I am so thankful for this product. It just helps to clear my mind, to put me at ease. It helps to relieve stress. It's really a godsend, and I'm thankful for the product and for Shunta for creating it.
Hope, thank you so much for sharing why you love the Best Today Guide with us. You know, there was something in there. I don't know if you all caught it, but I'm really excited and want to point this out. Did you hear how she said she's so grateful that it helps her focus on, and then she paused and said me, almost like did she feel like, do I want to say this? But she then came in and powerfully said, it helps me to focus on me, and with power and with, what's the word? Just unapologetically saying, this is something that gets me back to me. And you know what? That is why we do what we do here. We want to provide resources for you that help you get back to you, because getting back to you is how you're able to give back and be the person that you want to be for all those people in your life who you love. And so I'm just so grateful. Again, I love that moment when she says it helps. I think she said it helps me to focus on me, almost like it was a revelation. And also like she kind of was like, well, do I want to just say that? Yes, say that, because that is the thing. We want to help you to build that that self-awareness muscle, that self-love muscle. And it's not a selfish thing. It's not. That's just it. It's really taking care of yourself is the best thing you can do for this world, for the people you love, for yourself. And I'm just grateful that the Best Today Guide is doing exactly that, and really even more than I pictured when I sat down those many years ago to create what it ultimately did become the Best Today Guide. So if you are not using the Best Today Guide or any of our resources, here's what you need to do. Number one, go to besttodayguide.com/quiz. Take our product quiz. I'm happy to walk you through in that quiz a few short questions, and we tell you what is best based on your answers. So maybe the Best Today Guide isn't where you want to start. Maybe you want to start with an online program like Right Now Routine or Plans Be Done. Maybe the Week Today bundle might be better for you. But here's the thing. Don't hear all these things and freak out. Take one step. And that first step is to go to besttodayguide.com/quiz. Take the quiz, and we're happy to help. If you ever have questions about your quiz results, you can email us at any time at besttoday@shuntagrant.com or text us at 404-737-1002. Thank you again, Hope, for sharing your story and why the Best Today Guide works so well for you in your life. You can get yours right now at besttodayguide.com. And remember, every order of the Best Today Guide comes with your first month in the Best Today community for free. So besttodayguide.com. Let's get back to the rest of the episode. I had to let go of not only that identity, but also let go of the thought that this is what defines me or proves me in a room. Because you know what? what you think of me is probably not going to change if I tell you those things, because I can give you my resume. It's very impressive. I've done a lot of quote unquote impressive things. But if it takes that for you to listen to me, I don't want your ear in the first place. And if it takes that for you to listen to me, then it's not really going to be enough. Right. And so I have decided that I have nothing to prove to any human on the planet, that I already know I was born with all the points, with all the value, all the worthiness, just like you are. And one thing I'm not going to do in this lifetime is try to convince you of that. You either are aware of it or you're not, but my job is not to convince you that I am worthy or that I am valuable. Same thing for you. Your job is not to convince someone else of who you are and your value and your worthiness, because it's already understood. When I meet you, I know I'm meeting a person who is completely valuable, completely worthy. And you can tell me your story too. And that just tells me about who you are and the things in your story. But they don't tell me, hey, I'm telling you this to tell you why I am important. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So for me, it was learning to let go of that thinking, and that behavior really was another lesson for me in letting go. I had to let go of the identity of this, I am a lawyer, but actually I wasn't anymore. I chose not to be, and not allowing that to define who I was. And then, the journey from there really organically grew from just doing it because of Zoe. But like I said, being acknowledged by people as that could see my business was growing, see where we're getting in stores, traveling, going to markets, speaking, taking a business class, and in that business class being recognized as a rising star, and then saying, hey, rising star, why don't you come and teach my class? And then when I taught that group, someone in that group said, can you come and teach my group? And so that's how speaking kind of came about. And I started being a paid speaker. And that's when I decided that I really want to help women when it comes to business, really do business on the other side of busy, with coaching them around utilizing their time, creating and executing goals that matter. And how do you break that down? And that's when I taught my program, which was called Peace, Pace, Progress. And so that all started to unfold. And what I was doing in all of those things was just the next thing that made sense. It was just like a logical flow. And I know for a fact, all of that was meant to get me to exactly where I am. This is the place that all of that was for, right? Because what I learned from there was that I really love teaching women about their life and talking to women about their life more than their business. I like talking to you about the things that to me matter most. And I saw how time was really crippling for a lot of people, and a lot of the things I teach, even with Best Today, I created those tools like the Best Today guide. I created what looks like a portion of the Best Today guide in Peace, Pace, Progress, and working for business owners and teaching them how to, think about themselves first, their morning routine, their mental, emotional, physical health. It looked very similar to what is now the Best Today guide. And I realized this isn't a thing that only business owners need. This is something that a lot of women need across all boards. Even those who, work primarily in the home, those who are professionals, those who have their own business, those who are single, those who are married, those who have young children, middle-aged children, older children. This was for more than that. And that's really where, not because of Zoe, but Best Today was starting to be formed in my mind. But I had to then also learn to let go of the things that were making great money, but were not what I really perked up about, what I was really excited about. Like, I would love talking to someone about their business, but I will always start with, tell me about your life, because I needed to know what you wanted for your life before I can help you with your business. And that talking to people about like the kind of parent they wanted to be or the kind of person they want to be lit my fire. And so I had to let go of the business to business aspect to gain hold to what I knew I really, really loved. And so that was another of those letting goes. And really every time I let go, it was to grasp onto something that was so much better and that I truly believe was meant to be the next thing and that got me to where I am today. And so most recently, I've had to practice that letting go yet again. And I say this like, I hope I am getting to a place where the letting go is coming to an end. I probably not, but it's just so, as I thought about this, I was just like, this letting go thing, it does get easier, but it still doesn't make it less. It doesn't make me feel it any less. It still matters. But most recently, I decided to let something else go. And that was because of Zoe, that first company that I started when I realized in 2022 that my capacity and my time and my vision for the future, something we talk about in the Best Day Guide every morning, just really no longer had the space for it. I had plans in 2022 to really pour fire on because of Zoe and pick up where we left off. In March of 2022, like early March, the week before the shutdown happened here in America and in Greenville, where I live, I was looking at buildings. We were getting a brand new building for because of Zoe, and we were shopping buildings and talking to people about building like custom spaces in their buildings for because of Zoe, because I knew I was about to start Best Today. We were going to be getting inventory in for Best Today, and I didn't have space for because of Zoe and Best Today. And then everything closed, and every home was everything. And then the fall came and my son didn't go to school as expected. So he's still home and my daughter's still home. And that changed my work schedule because the schedule with my nanny had to shift and change because, again, she wasn't expecting to stay on this long, but I'm so grateful she did. And so it went from 3 days a week to 2 days a week. And, that was the cards. Those were the cards I was handed. And so it was easy to kind of grow Best Today, keep because of Zoe, just kind of above water. We were still doing great, making sales, but limiting what we were offering temporarily, or at least what I felt was temporarily. And then that poured into 2021. And I finally said, 2022, I'm turning things back up. But when I really looked at my capacity and the fact that my children are still home right now, I knew that not only the capacity and the time, but what I want to do is pour everything into this bucket. And so I had to make that choice. And it was not an easy one, and shared it with our private community. And it was a hard decision. Even when I told my close friends, they remember because of Zoe from the very beginning and the huge, huge role that it's played in my life. But it was the lesson in learning to let go that made it, even though that decision was hard, it made it really easy and very peaceful. It was a lesson in doing what I teach you all every single week, every single day. Number one, honoring myself, understanding what I had to do for me and my life and the life I want to create and the work that I want to do in this world, letting go of what others may think. I clearly had to do that when I decided, hey, I'm going to start practicing law to make hair bows. Right? I had to let go what other people think. And maybe you think you're not holding on to what people are thinking, but I'm almost willing to bet you are. How can you let that go? That's another, lesson in letting go. I had to look at what was in my basket. And I talk about that all the time when I use the chef's, the chopped analogy, right? When you have this basket, what's in your basket? What's in my basket was not what I thought it would be in early March 2020 when we were looking at buildings to grow. Something happened in my basket that changed everything. My priorities didn't change, right? If anything, it just solidified my priorities. And that's the beautiful thing. Throughout all of this, my priorities haven't changed, but how I want to live them out, that's the part that has changed, to make them more of a priority. And so my family and keeping my children home and keeping them safe, that was a priority at the risk of losing everything. So those were the choices I made, this pandemic that came in, and having 2 young children and a changed schedule, working less, growing a team, having to be able to do that, to train a team, to get them, on board and learning how to grow in this company. Actually, I'm looking back now and I am so impressed with what I have been able to do with all those different limitations. And so I want you to know that I remain a walking billboard for what I teach. One, because I've lived it. I've lived the other side of it. And I lived the part where now I'm telling you I do the things that the reason I do the things I tell you is because I've lived the life not doing those things for a lot of the things I teach. And number 2, I just know life is better and more peaceful and more intentional with the principles actively in play in your life. And so there are 3 things in particular I want you to take from this as I talk about like this lesson in letting go and just the decisions that I've made in my life. as it pertains to you. Number one is that getting clear on what matters is not a one-time job, right? This wasn't like, oh, I made that one choice and I lived happily ever after. It is a continual thing. You will continue to do this as you live and grow and evolve. Some things will remain the same. Like I mentioned, my priorities, they didn't change. They just became more solidified. Number two, letting go of expectations and choosing not to hold on to the perception of others is the doorway to peace. If you want to walk into a life of peace, you've got to make that exchange to walk in the door and let go of expectations, even ones you have put on yourself, and choosing not to hold on to the perception of others. And number three is to honor the season of life that you're in. Every decision that I've made is a reflection of also the season of life that I found myself in at that time. And it's so important to honor the season of life you're in because it is that capsule in which we're living our lives. And yes, there's so much, yes, there are boundaries and limitations within every season. I just shared this week on social, in December in the South, you're not going to go jump in the pool. And everyone is aware of that because it's winter, it's a season, and that is a limitation on that season. So even if your favorite thing is jumping in the pool, you're not going to do that in December because it's cold outside and the water in the pool is closed and your neighborhood pool is covered and closed for that reason. Same thing. There are limitations in every season, but there's so much beauty and growth, space, and freedom in every season too. And so find that rather than harping on the limitations of the season that you're in, find the freedom and the beauty and the unique and specific memories that come only in this season, right? In the Best Today community, a number of people who live in DC were sharing pictures of the flowers blooming. I think it's the cherry blossoms. And it was gorgeous. And I was like, bask in the cherry blossoms of the now. Like, what is that thing in this season that is so unique to this season that you can really find that good in? Honor that and stop harping on the limitations, because then when this season is over and done, you want to have lived within it and taken all the good stuff there was to take from this season of your life. Okay. And that's really how I've made my decision, honoring myself, honoring the season that I'm in, and honoring my priorities in my life, and letting go of expectations, letting go of false identities, letting go of anything that really isn't, a key essential block to build toward the life that I want and the vision I have for who I want to be in my life. I hope that this conversation has been really helpful with you. I would love to continue this conversation because now you get to be a part of it in the Best Today community. So if you're not in the Best Today community, you can go to besttodaycommunity.com and join us. Remember that your first month is free with the purchase of the Best Today Guide, the online program bundle, and the starter bundle at besttodayguide.com. We'll link to all three of those in the show notes. And if you're unfamiliar with our community, it is the actively engaged, really the best place to be on the internet. That's really not on the internet because it's free of trolls and ads and spam. It is our own safe space. You have it. You can reach it through our apps, whether it's on Android or Apple. And inside of there, it's filled with women who are also living a life of intention, trying to prioritize their mental, emotional, physical health daily. You're going to find encouragement, support, live calls, co-working hours, guided journal prompts, curriculum created just for you to help you get clear on who you are and what you want. All of this is at your fingertips 24/7 inside of our private community that you can access at besttodayguide.com to sign up. So remember, your first month is free when you order the Best Today Guide, Starter Bundle, or the Online Programs Bundle. Thank you for being present with me for this week's episode of the Best Today podcast. Until next time, remember that you are capable and worthy of being your best one today at a time. And you have everything you need to have everything you want. So go on and shout it out as you live it out. This is what my best today looks like. I'll talk to you again real soon. If you enjoyed this week's episode of the Best Today podcast, you are going to love the Best Today Guide. Our Better Than a Planner guide teaches you how to get clear on what you want, identify your self-destructive habits and behaviors, and intentionally create space to prioritize yourself every single day. Don't go the journey to being your best one today at a time without the Best Today Guide. See inside its pages and order yours today at besttodayguide.com. Even better, when you order the Best Today Guide, we gift you with your first month free inside of the Best Today membership. So what are you waiting for? We're giving you everything you need to trade busy for intention. Go to besttodayguide.com and order yours today and join thousands of women across the globe proclaiming each day, this is what my best today looks like.